become so indoctrinated by their socially acceptable norms that each person's very meaning is framed by the dominant established value system, and the interpretation of new information is consciously or even subconsciously pre-filtered to be consistent with their prior biases. Now, this basic idea understood, let's hone our focus and briefly consider this mind lock phenomenon, as you could call it, in the context of economics, specifically market economics. Actually, a more accurate term at this stage would be economic theology, for, as this presentation will explore, the majority of people on this planet not only have no idea how they are being affected negatively by the market economy at large, they actually, on average, hold a steadfast commitment to its principles based on nothing more than the traditional indoctrination. I got an email once that said to me, if you're against the free market, you're against freedom. And naturally, I shuddered at this state of mind control that the dominant established orthodoxy has successfully imposed. Of course, this is how power is maintained, and has been maintained by the dominant established orthodoxies since the beginning of time. And the trick, again, is to condition people so thoroughly into the established value systems that any thought of an alternative is inherently ruled out without critical examination. And to show how deeply pervasive this phenomenon is, you will notice that virtually all the activist organizations in the environmental, social, and political movements of the day always exclude the market system itself as a determinant of harmful effects. It doesn't even occur to them. Instead, they focus on individuals and certain groups or corrupt corporations, and while it is needed in a per-case basis to target problematic areas, it avoids the mechanism which is essentially creating the problem. This is the fatal flaw of what's happening in the so-called activist community today. And, as will be firmly and clearly established over the course of this presentation, the greatest destroyer of ecology, the greatest source of waste and pollution, the greatest purveyor of violence, war, crime, inhumanity, poverty, and social distortion, the greatest generator of social and personal neuroses, mental disorders, depression, anxiety, and the greatest source of social paralysis, stopping us from moving into new methodologies for global sustainability and hence progress on this planet, is not some government, it's not some legislation, it's not some rogue corporation or monopoly or cartel, it's not some flaw of human nature. It is, in fact, the economic system itself at its very foundation. The market system, monetary system, free market, capitalist structure, whatever you want to call it, is not only the source of some of the greatest social problems we face today, it is also setting us up for what could be called the terminal stage of this disease, where the pathogenic social value cancer has mutated and multiplied to a point where we are now faced with nothing less than the death or collapse of modern civilization as we know it. Now, please understand, I'm not a doomsday theorist. I'm not here looking for general knee-jerk emotional reactions to say it's the end of the world. It doesn't take a genius to see where the trends are going, the trends that the media won't talk about. And given the pattern of political, economic, and environmental negligence and abuse, we're on a collision course, which I will explain as we continue. Are there solutions to these problems? Yes, there are. But they are so far outside of the status quo and a threat to those in power both politically and economically that they are just outright dismissed as irrational and absurd. The self-appointed guardians of the status quo won't even hear it because it's far outside of their reference and identity. Here's a few examples of some of the things that are currently happening right now, and there's many more. There's just a few that I popped up in the mainstream media. This is where the Zeitgeist movement comes in. I'm really sorry to say, we can no longer rely on government institutions to steer us in the right direction. Every government on this planet is locked into an economically oriented social program which is self-serving, unsustainable, and destructive to one degree or another. The possibility of a smooth transition into a new enlightened social design which does not have the negative byproducts, which I'm going to talk about, is extremely limited given the options made available in the current order, meaning the legal system, the political system, etc. Likewise, we can no longer endure the profit-driven ethos of the corporate and financial powers which control all of our precious resources on the planet. Resources we all need for survival. Society today is sick, and the illness permeates all life systems within it. And I see the Zeitgeist movement as the immune system of the social world, if you will. Thank you. Chapter 1, Diagnosis. Before I begin this analysis of the social condition, we need to first consider the problem of value and cultural relativism. People today tend to think that their ideas are equal to others' ideas, regardless of supported information. This obsession with opinion has created a frame of reference for so many people today which has no physical referent, where evidence becomes inconvenient, and ultimately people think that everything is equal. And you get this argument a lot, and I'm sure you've all experienced this. It's a very, very specific point. Everyone is not equal in their opinion. It's impossible, as quaint and convenient as such a concept might seem. The ultimate question becomes, what actually deserves belief? What is important to everyone on this planet, and how do we maintain our well-being both personally and socially in a sustainable way? What is the indisputable common ground which can all be agreed on in a world of Christians, Muslims, capitalists, socialists, atheists, anarchists, Scientologists, Republicans? What can we all agree on? Well, here's one thing that's universal. Being healthy versus being sick. Being healthy is a preferred value preference, you could say. Normal versus pathological states, hence healthy versus diseased states, provide an incontrovertible value basis, for all individuals and societies. Virtually all people in all societies prefer to be alive and healthy. Last I checked. There is no cultural relativism about whether having good food to eat, staying away from cancer, or having unpolluted water to drink is a good value to have. Therefore, our analysis of the health of society is not going to be based on GDP, the consumer price index, the state of the stock market, economic growth, unemployment levels or employment levels, free trade agreements, or any other commonly referenced economic attribute used to claim that society is improving or growing. Instead, we will examine things that actually matter, such as rates of disease, poverty, social capital, trust, conflicts, corruption, planetary depletion, pollution, murder rates, life expectancy, educational performance, imprisonment rates, drug and alcohol abuse, mental illness, etc. These are things that actually matter. So let's begin. Contrary to popular belief, evidence now shows that our early human ancestors, which predate the Neolithic Revolution, really didn't live in a state of perpetual conflict and extreme scarcity as many anthropologists early on had assumed. In fact, hunter-gatherer societies were in a very unique arrangement, immersed in both a restrictive yet self-regulating environmental paradigm. Before the advent of agriculture, there was very little control over what was available. You didn't have agriculture, you couldn't control the environment. So what happened is a natural balance was in order. And the societies themselves seem to reflect this balance by having, in fact, non-hierarchical, non-competitive, leaderless social structures. In fact, it has been found that their value systems, their social values, were essentially based on equality, altruism, and sharing. And they literally forbid upstartism, dominance and aggression, and egoism. We know this today because of anthropological research done on remaining hunter-gatherer societies around the world, such as the Pitaha, which is how it's pronunciated, out of Brazil. Amazingly, it appears that well over, and this is an important point, for anyone that tells you that the current system is natural, for well over 90% of the human being's existence, human species' existence, on this planet as we know it, we were within social organizations that did not use money, that did not have hierarchy, and they even had counter-dominance strategies where the majority would work together to shut down any individual that was trying to gain power and control. Pretty much a reverse of what we have today. The Neolithic Revolution changed all of that. It provided human beings with an ability to control their environment more intently. The sustenance of life could now be cultivated essentially at will.